Really? Treats to the dogs right as I start? Well, they look happy. Hi, guys. If you're viewing this, this is not a live recording. This is a replay. But I will attempt to answer your questions or anything you want to propose or pose. The big thing about this is I'm going to try to keep this short. Today has just been a crazy, crazy day. Not only did we hit the 10 million goal, which is for phone banking, which was 5 million, which is basically, okay, so at the beginning of the month, they set a goal for 5 million calls before Iowa, being like, wow, 5 million calls. And keep in mind, the last goal that was set was 3 months ago, right before I got banned, which was only a 2 million goal, I think, which we struggled to hit. So when we talk about the movement growing and what's happening, we can see very direct numbers of movement growth from the 2 million goal and us blowing out 10 million calls in just 30 days. That's nuts. We actually did a day ahead of schedule. I had misinterpreted the rule when I talked about it earlier. I thought we actually fell a little short, but it turned out that we didn't. Just so you know, that's exactly how I handled this appointment. I say nothing. So, we're going to talk a little bit about strategy. Iowa Caucus is right around the corner. It'd be very easy to spend my time going, oh, the DNC is evil and they're all trying to get us, but that's just totally true, but not necessarily where we need our frame of perspective to be from. So with the Iowa Caucus, we have something very tough to talk about, and I want to get into it right at the start of this call, or excuse me, video. I've been doing a lot of conference calling lately. So check this out. We need to talk about something. The approach to the strategy has to change, and it has to change right away. This is going to seem overblown at first, but I need you to understand there's a really important rule that's changed. And they kind of did it quietly, and at first it doesn't really mean anything, but you got to understand how the Iowa Caucus works to really understand. In the Iowa Caucus, it's like the weather changing, the wind blows, and everybody changes. So someone could be over 15% on one run, but not over 15% on the next, because everyone can see them going to one candidate, so they get behind one candidate. Here's what changed. This time, if your candidate is above 15% at a precinct level, you can no longer reorganize yourself into other delegate spaces. Now, here's the thing. This can either really screw us, or it can really screw the corporatists. And that's where I think we really need to take a second to just divide the party. Because we have the movement and we have the corporatists. And everyone who is not a corporatist is a part of the movement, even if they don't know it, because they want that change and they want to see these things move. But so you just got to accept that, whether or not, regardless of what they say, you got to approach them with that attitude. What did I say earlier? You got to have a winner's, you got to maintain a winner's attitude while we campaign like an underdog. So when it comes to the caucuses, we have to be really mindful of the idea of it's going to really hurt the corporatists because they're all struggling to get above 15% to maintain their donations. But for us, I would say on the Bernie side, we have maybe Warren, some of Warren's people, maybe some of Amy Klobuchar's people, maybe some of, I would say all of Yang's people. I'm going to just say we'll probably pull all of Yang right off the bat. Tulsi's people, they're all polling between 6 and 8% right now in Iowa, which, by the way, the poll today did get canceled because Pete complained that they had a single call that Pete was not on as a selection, and they got the entire poll pulled. And so what they did, and people were like, well, how did they do that? Well, what they were going to do is they were going to attempt to say that this poll does not handling its polling properly for whatever reason. And that would have damaged the poll throughout the whole primary, because the media would have constantly brought up this issue of, oh, well, this poll was drawn into question, so maybe we shouldn't listen to it. And that would damage them and their own fundraising and how they manage their organization. So they yanked the whole thing, which I think was actually a very smart move. Someone did make a simple mistake, and this is a silly thing for it to happen, but from the perspective of the poll, very smart. So when it comes to Iowa and what's going to happen, when it comes to Yang supporters and all these people that I'm talking about, there are going to be precincts where you're going to get above 15%. And in the past, you would be like, this is amazing. We'll get above 15% this once. Just prove that we could, and then reorganize into another group. You cannot do this time. The rule has changed. If you get 15% above in a precinct, you're stuck there. So really, when you get 15% and your candidate is not competitive compared to the other people in your precinct, I need you to have a hard, calm look at what you're doing. Recognize you made your 15%. Put it on social media, and then put it behind another candidate. And I'm hoping it's going to be Bernie Sanders. I cannot express how much we need these, all these individual parts. I always say politics is a game of fractions. We need all these games of fractions to come together. And if people come at it from the perspective that in Iowa caucuses of previous, where they say, oh, well, we'll get 15% once, and then someone will get reorganized and go to the next phase, and it'll be fine. No. You're stuck. You have to do it beforehand. You have to recognize you only have 15 to 18%, and you need that 15 or 18% is going to make a winner. So what I always say I do in politics is really just try to finish the job. I'm not really the guy who necessarily does the majority of the work. Sorry, I know people are like, you're lazy. It's a thing. Maybe that's true. You got to be kind of smart to be this lazy. Point is that what it really comes down to is that you got to drag people over that last 10%. And if you don't get over the last 10%, the last bit, you don't win. So it really comes down to we need the individual 15, 10, 12% that are all of us. This is why I've been begging people to be kind to other people, to be kind to our opponents' candidates, because we're in the movement. And it really comes down to whether or not somebody is in the movement or they're a corporatist. Because everyone that doesn't blindly support corporations can be a part of the movement. And we have to make room for all these people. We have to make sure that there's space for all of them, because we won't win, and then we get nothing. So the rig is in a lot of individual places, but the best way they can get us is to get us to rig ourselves. By being angry and alienating, we push away all these people that we need in order to make this majority. So we got to be patient just for a couple of months, man, at least through the general. Best case scenario, it's until the general election. Worst case scenario, it's like until Super Tuesday. And here's the thing. It's kind of obvious that Bernie is doing exceptionally well and building stuff everywhere he can. So I really need everyone to really be, this is where I stand. Like, if Bernie actually does get rigged out, you guys, I will be like, have fun, do whatever. I'll be like, great. I'll get my chair out and I'll watch it, and I'll probably fund a couple people that want to do stuff. Because there's no way that they can pull this off and maintain a major party status and pull some shenanigans, and we have the people. The whole point of what we did all this time was, when I talk about, I've been joking kind of lately that I feel like we rigged the process for Bernie Sanders by making it fair. So I'm going to say a couple things right now, explaining some of the things going on. My point that I just made, just in case you're jumping in right now, I just made the point that we really need everyone who would eventually go to Bernie Sanders at the caucus precinct level. If they're going to get reorganized, if they're going to hit 15%, they actually have to stop and reorganize before they hit 15%, or else they're stuck there. So let's move on from that. So let's talk about real fast how, and this is going to be kind of boring, but I'm going to do it really quickly. I'm sorry. I know I have 13, 12 people watch 12 off as soon as I say the word boring. The rule change. I want to really make people feel a little better about what's kind of gone on recently, because I want to explain the difference very briefly, and it is going to be actually brief because I've practiced this already. The difference between the criteria that Perez changed for the debates versus the rule, like the superdelegate rule, because they broke on the same day, and they're very, very different. So on one hand, and I don't remember which hand I started with explaining which one they were, so just go with it. On one hand, you have a criteria. And a criteria is something that it's like a testing ground. It's like a thing that the chair controls completely. And this was an option for the superdelegate reform, but the chair could cave to pressure from big money interests, like he did on the climate debate and other things, which I understand he wanted to put his weight on things as the chair, and they were trying to remove him at the time. So I kind of get it. I mean, I don't agree, but I get it. So he's okay. So the one is a criteria. The chair has complete control. One is a rule that is required by committees. So the superdelegate rule is very, very challenging to change. The criteria for debate stuff, the chair has complete discretion of. Now, if we take control of the party, we can go into the charter, which requires a 2/3 vote. So we actually need people. I'll get there in a second. Just got some bad news. So, Mariana, I want to say that was very distracting. She just told me that McDonald's is still in Washington on the DNC members, which is very disappointing to hear. But let's just stay focused. So when it comes to a criteria, the chair has total control. When it comes to a rule, it requires a committee. So in order to shift the rule, right, let's just say hypothetically, we want to shift the rule. In order to shift the rule, you have to first go into committee, which would require either A, an emergency meeting from the current rules and bylaws. This is a group who has already rigorously been tasked with coming up with the design of this rule, which took months. And I'm not joking when I say it took months. It took probably 2.5 months of 5 or 6 meetings. It was really, really lengthy. It took there was a lot of fighting. I was involved, very ugly. So you're asking this committee to have an emergency meeting to reopen this idea. Then they have to have, or they have to wait till the convention and have the standing committee, which is completely different members, people we don't know who they are yet. It's going to be decided a lot by the candidates. Then they can vote at the thing. So let's just stay focused. Let's go with one option. First option is the emergency rules and bylaws meets. They would then have to have a majority vote to change this rule. Then they would have to have the entire DNC voting body meet and vote on it. That can only happen in the convention. There's no way the DNC body can meet and vote, right? They meet and vote on it. That's it. So that's the only way they can change the rule, with having an emergency meeting. The other way that they could hypothetically change it is at the convention. When the convention starts, they have to rubber stamp the rules again, and they go, we agree with what the DNC already did, which they should, because we spent a lot of time on it. And then they go, that's it. So what they would have to do is try to strike some type of language from the thing. So they'd come up with an amendment being like, okay, we would like to strike lines, and they would figure out, like when you're doing chess pieces on a board, a numeric number. So you wouldn't actually know what's being struck. They would say, like, we want to strike this footnote, which is actually what they tried to do. So I want to say this. It's not like we got this easy. They tried 100 different ways to screw us over. And the last way they tried, at the last second, and I'll link you to the post where I flipped out over it, they tried to move the eligibility into a footnote. Now, this may seem like not a big deal, but because you got to understand how the process by which they would remove it, which I understood 2 years ago when we were negotiating this rule, it came down to they can line item strike anything, because it's all based on Robert's Rules of Order. And so they can line item strike anything they want. But if the eligibility is in the rule itself, you can't line item strike it, because the rule would have to be altered. In order to alter the rule, because see, the thing is that the entire eligibility is in that rule. If you remove that rule, you remove total eligibility for the entire DNC. You can't do that. It wouldn't work. So you'd have to remove or structure or change. And the thing is that the detail of trying to remove that individual piece is impossible. I mean, it would burn the DNC down. It would rip everything apart. And so in order to call all these meetings, Tom Perez has to agree to call these meetings. He's the chair. So you have to go to him and make that happen. I think there's a Kennedy there's someone, or an Eisenhower, or someone, I can't remember what his last name is. He's a very famous family, from a very famous political family, who runs the rules and bylaws. They would have to do things they've said they are not willing to do. So in order to change this rule, they would need a time machine and have stopped the negotiation process that I keep talking about, but no one was paying attention when it was happening, so we got it done. I mean, that's really what this comes down to. And it kind of, I mean, a little personally, it's a little enraging at times, that I think that people need to really understand that that the movement is alive and well, and we've been working hard. I mean, it wasn't just me. Tons of people were involved with the different steps of the process. I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, I did a lot of things, but it was impossible without the we, without the collective we, without the force, without the energy that all of you create. Nothing I could have negotiated would be possible. I mean, nothing. I tried before, and it's like, hey, it's getting a little hot in here, you know what I'm saying? it's not good. It won't work. So it's a team effort. It's a movement. It's a we. It's all kinds of things. But there's no way for them to change the rule. And the Bloomberg stuff, I don't think ever. I mean, keep the rage meter high because it'll keep them from screwing us with it later. But what it really comes down to, Bloomberg is only going to pull Biden's voters as people realize Biden is unelectable. And it's not that he's unelectable in the sense that, no, it is. It is actually all the senses of unelectable. He's totally unelectable, which is sad and super disappointing because, I think that if he hadn't ran, I mean, it's good for us, it's good for me and my plan, but it's just sad because he, ego and all these things jump up in front of people and they think that there's some sort of destiny, like Beto when he was saying, I'm born for this. It's just not a good attitude to have. It's like when people want you to do it is the best time to do it. I got a couple of comments here I'm going to get into real fast. I don't think it's anything too complicated. Michelle Skywalker is making comments, so of course they need my full attention. The McDonald thing is really upsetting. Mariana, was that actually elections today? I'm going to look into that a little bit more. I've been saying for a little while, I think I might have started a little late, that David McDonald in Washington needs to not be elected. And he's been DNC forever, and he's never been state party chair, so he has to be elected at the state level, which is, it happens in Washington. So Michelle says, I was thinking about running for DNC in Washington, Nebraska, but fear holds me back in money. I don't have money. Okay, and here's the other thing. The DNC has dues. It's $500 a year. And it's a lot of travel costs. So if we want to put people in the DNC and we want to play their game until we take control of, which I don't think we can change the travel costs, and we could figure out how to make it more equitable. Like if I was the DNC chair, I would be trying to cut the best deal possible for the hotels. I would be trying to make it as equitable as possible for everyone to get involved. I would be trying to bring more voices to the table and make sure everyone is heard. I also would try to end the disingenuous system of lying they have and how they hire people at the DNC, the whole other issue we can get into another time. I've talked about it extensively at other moments. Because we really need an inclusive organization. Because I think that we're at this really great moment, especially with what's happening with Donald Trump and the impeachment, that if the Democrats really got super strong leadership who knew what they were doing in charge with a Bernie policy mind, we would really stand the chance to effect real change and maybe even kill. I mean, I would love to be in a world. This is always sort of where I thought things were aiming, is that you want to basically crush the Republican Party into atoms and have the Democratic Party be a center-left party. I know you guys don't like me saying that, but when you crush the Republican Party, you have the a far-left party evolve out of that, and that's what I was always trying to do with the Progressive Independent Party and some of the other people who were doing things back in the day before all the Tim Canova drama. I was really trying to figure out how to make it so that we could crush the Republicans and have a new, further left party, come up and be the second major party, kind of how the Vermont Progressive Party did it. But how you do it is really delicate, or else you end up just electing Republicans. So it's complicated, and you need a lot of coordination, and it gets it's something we could do, though. I mean, I feel like the movement can do it, and you want to take the one out to build up the other one. So that you have this far left party that's always pushing everything further left, further and further and further, until we're arguing over how to best spend all of our excess solar energy, I think is the joke. So let's see, hang on a second. Michelle says, I'm young in the game. I've been actually about many years. Caucus chair, only been chairwoman of the Native Caucus for 3 years. What if I don't have the votes? Michelle, the DNC badly needs Native representation. We had Franklin Muir, who was, I believe, in your state, a longtime member, and I had many. I think I butchered his name, but I had many excellent conversations with him at the DNC meetings. He was just always just such an excellent person, and I think that if you're trying to keep some essence of that alive, I think you will easily get voted in. There is a very few states where there can be successful Native representation, and I think that I would back you 100%. Which kind of brings me to myself. I myself am considered running for DNC. We have, let's see, I have a thing on the wall. It is somewhere around February 20th that the final deadline for me to sign up for DNC in California is. It's kind of a long shot to run, but I feel with all the work that I've been doing, I should at least put myself up. So I'm currently seeking an e-board member who will recognize me or endorse me through the process. I got a couple people in mind. I really need somebody who doesn't mind stirring the everything, basically, because they're absolutely going to get phone calls and problems. They have to be somebody who's totally safe in their position. So I got a couple people in mind. So I am looking for that person, though, and I would really like to go. And I think even with Michelle and me and other people, yeah, I might not have to fundraise. I kind of got some stuff coming up. It's looking very, very promising. But, we have to fundraise for people like Michelle who are on some sense of fixed income, and we need them to go as DNC members. So this is just another new type of fundraising that's going to evolve out of, so we're going to, thank you, Justin. When we are going to transition from, because keep in mind, guys, for next thing we're going to do is we're doing campaign fundraising, then we're doing delegate fundraising, because the delegates all going to get there. Then we have to switch back immediately to campaign fundraising, okay? And the general election, all the totals reset, and we need all the lockstep Democrats to be willing to donate to vote Bernie Sanders. We have to make sure that money is coming in, because here's where they get us, where it really matters, is if Bernie has to lean on the state party, because what's going to happen is going to lean on the state parties. So anywhere he leans on the state parties, Pennsylvania or Florida, Michigan, Wisconsin, if he leans on the state party in any of those places, he's going to lose. I'm not trying to be a dick. We can fix it. We're the movement. We can do it. But if we let the state party handle operations in any of those 4 states for the Bernie Sanders campaign, which Florida is still my big, the bell is ringing, the rig, that's where the rig is going to happen, because it's freaking Florida, and I just went through it with Gillum. I just went through it. It's there. It's like they primed it, ready to go, because we use the same technique to get Gillum through the primary that we're using now for Bernie, which really it was about. So real quickly, 20 seconds. In Florida, we got Gillum through by sending out tons and tons of text messages and having multiple establishment candidates splitting up the vote. Oh, did I forget to mention that? We actually already tested this primary process and general election process in Florida in 2018 so that we could safely pull off the Bernie presidency in 2020. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I did. So we're going to do this, and we're going to do this only by knowing what the problem is and how we're going to fix it. So it's going to be all about Florida and Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Which Michigan, I'm not so worried about Michigan. We're going to under control. But Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Florida. And if we take those 4 states, if those 4 states go blue, it doesn't matter if it goes on Nevada or Virginia. I'm pretty sure maybe the math is pretty tight, but we still win. It's a winner take all. And if we win, everything changes. So learn how to win now so you're ready, because you're never going to get another opportunity like this in your life. Progressives don't know how to win, and we are going to win. But only if we work together and make sure that if you're getting above 15% on a caucus site and you would rather go to Bernie and you know it could be the difference in the election, don't be a spoiler. Come on, man. We've all worked this hard. So that's the difference between the movement and the corporatists, and that's the difference between the rules change and the criteria change, and that's the difference between the rigging we got to worry about in the primary and the general election. So I really hope that people listen, and I really hope that we're prepared, because you will never get an opportunity like this again. If we don't pull this off, they will never let us get this close. Never. We are in striking distance of changing the world, of affecting and altering neoliberal policies all over the planet. Austerity is killing people. And we have the opportunity to really move and make it happen and facilitate that action. And it comes down to sweat equity and whether or not you're going to put in the time to make the calls, knock on the doors, convince your friends, do whatever you have to do. Because we're truly in a situation of whatever it takes. We only get one shot. And technically, this is our second.